leaving the Marine Corps in 2006 and going into the entrepreneurial world, I looked to people who I trusted for advice. Started to go out to some of the most successful entrepreneurs in the world and ask them a single question, which was, how do you succeed as an entrepreneur? You see, I wanted to do three things really well. I wanted to grow my income, grow my impact so that I could change the world. And I wanted to be able to create a lifestyle where I build my business around my life and not the other way around. The answer from all the entrepreneurs I talked to was, you got to go big. I said, great, got to go big. But I had no idea what that was all about. Today, I'm going to be interviewing someone who throughout his life has gone big and he's still doing it. But not only that, he is big. He's NBA's James Donaldson. EdTalks Live is next. Hey, what's up, party people? My name's Ed Rush, 5-time #1 best-selling author, your host for the most positive place on the planet for insanely implementable ideas. We are here every Tuesday and Thursday, 10 o'clock East or 10 o'clock Pacific time, 1 o'clock Eastern, with some of the best interviews and entrepreneurial content on the planet. That word, entrepreneurial content on the planet. By the way, this Tuesday, we're going to do our second try on my interview with Alicia Doyle. So do not miss this. Talking to my Golden Gloves friend, California champion boxer, journalist, and author Alicia Doyle. But today, I'm talking to my friend, James Donaldson. We're going to talk about going big. As a reminder, as usual, jump into chat on the right-hand side. Tell us who you are, where you're from, what you do. If you're on Facebook, that is right below you. As we go today during this fast-paced interview, my team's going to be showing your chat comments. So we might as well make you famous. Jump in and tell us who you are, where you're from, what you do. And without any further ado, I'm going to bring on my friend, the big fan, James Donaldson. What's up, dude? How are you?
Ed, hey, I'm just doing great. How are you today? And I hope your listening audience is doing fabulous.
It's awesome, man. Last time I saw you, we were at our friend George Toll's group in Seattle, long before anybody was wearing masks. And we're just there to change the world. So it's good to see you, even if it's digitally, dude.
Yeah, I don't like this digital thing, but it is what it is. So hopefully in the near future, we get back to actually people-person contact, which
we're gonna get there, buddy. Hey, so I want to do a quick introduction. James Donaldson is a Washington State grad. He was in the NBA back in 1980 to 1995. Now, coincident, by the way, with a referee by the exact same name as me, with a senior at the end of it. My dad, in fact, that was right at the end of his career, James. He finished up right around 95, believe it or not. So right. You guys were on the court together. I'm sure there's some stories there. But ever since coming out of the NBA, James has been a speaker, an author. He's the author of 2 amazing books, Standing Above the Crowd and Celebrating Your Gift of Life. He ran for mayor of Seattle. We're going to twist his arm and have him run for mayor of Seattle again, I think, because your city needs you, my friend. But welcome to the show. And I'd love to just tell your story. I mean, you weren't this. You have a big personality, buddy, but you are not always this way. In fact, you always describe yourself as some of this shy kid. What's the story with that?
Yeah, and I still have a lot of that shyness and introvert. Being a public persona as yourself and a lot of folks we know, you kind of learn to, turn it on, turn it off, or at least, put on that public persona. But like a lot of folks, and I think a lot of folks in our industry, a lot of us are actually kind of quiet, kind of maybe on our own, doing our own thing, and maybe a little introverted, which I still am. I started out way back in Sacramento, California, is where I grew up. The son of an Air Force technical sergeant for 20 years. My dad was in the Air Force 20 years, and he relocated, or he's out of Travis Air Force Base in the Bay Area, and that's where the real early years of my growing up were. And then we moved over to Sacramento after he retired after 20 years. So Sacramento was home, and a nice stable home. My dad stayed with us, was part of the family throughout all of our growing up years. He still, God bless his soul, is doing well. He's almost 94 years old now,
man,
and he's just doing fabulous. So it's just wonderful to see. He's had such a long life to bless all of us with. My mother unfortunately passed about 6 years ago, but two of them stayed married throughout all of our growing up years, at least 30,
Wow.
40 years. Yeah, and I think that's key to a lot of what we are seeing with our younger generation of folks, having parents who actually parented and made sure we all grew up, knowing the basic principles of life, right from wrong, good from bad, respect, treating each other right, the golden rule. That's how, people in our generation grew up, Ed. And we need a little dose of that back into.
We're gonna we're gonna talk about the world. I already told James in our discussion before this. I said he lives in Seattle, so we're gonna talk about the state of the world. But you were thrust into the limelight, really, in a lot of ways. I mean, you were a big, strong, good athlete, and that puts you in a place of in the public eye, and that happened for you really young too. I mean, what was that like for a guy who describes himself a little bit of introvert, kind of just getting forced into that? What kind of courage did that take, or what did that journey mean for you?
Yeah, well, I didn't come in this world as a basketball star from the womb, as a lot of my colleagues are. They come in dribbling the basketball, and early 3, 4, 5 year olds are still playing. They start playing. I, being an introverted type, didn't start playing until my senior year in high school,
Wow.
and I had to be talked and coerced into even trying out for the team during my junior year. So my coach saw what kind of kid I was. He said, "Well, if I put too much pressure on this kid, he's going to run away and never come back. If I just kind of give him little baby steps, maybe he'll keep on taking those baby steps and grow into being comfortable and more confident." So all through my junior year in high school, my coach, he put newspaper and cardboard over all the windows in the gym, so the other kids couldn't stare in and laugh at me and
Ah,
because that would have scared me away.
wow.
I would have.
Wow.
So he did that the whole junior year for me, and as I just came out to practice and started practicing basketball with the team, I knew nothing about the game. My dad was a big athletic guy, but he was a real serious, military type, disciplined, work, 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 a little time for fun at the end of the week. That's how we grew up. So sports was something that you just had everything, absolutely everything done, all your chores done, all your homework done, nothing else you could help out around the house with. Now you can go play a little sports. So that's how I grew up. So I practiced all through my junior year just to get the feel for what basketball was all about. And I rolled into my senior year and played my very first official game as a senior at
Ah,
the Burbank High School in Sacramento. Uh, After that, I was showing some raw talent. I wasn't really, really good, just some basic talent that could had a lot of potential if I wanted to work at it. George Raveling, my basketball coach at Washington State University, took a notice of me when I was playing high school basketball and started sending letters of encouragement and interest of me to come to Washington State University. George was a lot like my dad, which is probably what I was looking for
yeah.
and probably what I needed, being a 18-year-old to 19-year-old. George was very disciplined, very, very structured, very, very intense. My dad was very much the same way. So the baton was handed off. I was the baton from my dad to George Raveling. George took me all the way up to Pullman, Washington. I don't know if your listeners know where Pullman is, but it's a small college town on the eastern side of Washington.
Yeah.
Maybe 10,000 residents during the year, and another 20,000 students influx in and out. So that's a college town. He took me all the way to Pullman, Washington, of which I knew nothing about. I didn't know anything about the Pacific Northwest growing up in Sacramento. And George told me that, "Hey, James, you're probably not going to play a lot your first couple of years, but I want you to practice. I want you to get bigger, stronger, tougher, meaner, grow, 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 get better, get better." And he assigned me, a track coach from the track team to teach me running techniques and all the rest of these mechanics and things I wasn't aware of. He assigned me a weight room lifting coach. So I was in the weight room with a lot of the football guys day after day, and started becoming bigger and stronger. I didn't play very much, maybe just a couple of minutes here or there if it was a blowout game. You're up by 30 or you're down by 30 and there's no chance to win. That's when I kind of got thrown in the game my first 2 years at Washington State University. But my junior year rolled around, and now I'm really fulfilled and grown into a bona fide college athlete as a senior, as a junior and senior at Washington State. That's when I really started playing basketball and really got to be pretty good at it, enough to get some attention from the NBA folks.
This story is so interesting because you have your dad, who you have so much respect for, who is a leader for you, and then you have this coach who, what was the name of your high school coach that kind of twisted your arm, I guess?
And he was an old Marine.
Really? Oh, so there you go, man.
He had the crew and everything all through high school. Chuck Calhoun was his name.
You have Chuck Calhoun, and then you have George. I know George, by the way. I had lunch with George just a few years ago out in Vegas. I mean, truly a basketball legend. I mean, that man, I think, has mentored and helped more legendary basketball players than many people that I know, and I think he still does Jordan's thing. But you've got three people that put their heart into you, and it, you had, how tall were you when you were in high school, by the way? Like junior, senior year, were you getting there?
I was up about 6'10", 6'11".
So, I mean, they saw talent,
yeah,
but they took their time to put their heart into this young player, who didn't even know how to play basketball. Then all of a sudden, you're playing at the Division I level. I just think it's such a neat story. Everyone that I know who has the kind of success, James, that you have, there's always these people behind that, that are encouraging along the way. I love it.
And let me say, I mean, and having men, reach back and lead boys who can grow into men is really key. And this is really missing so much in so much of our United States, so many of our communities of color. The men are not there like my high school coach was, like my dad was, like George Raveling was, like Lenny Wilkins was. Time after time, I got passed off to another great mentor who was in my life that I respected, and I always wanted to be accountable to, along with myself. So we need to get our men stepping up and being present in these kids' lives again.
I love that, dude. And I think if all we did was that part of the interview and that's all you said, it would have been worth it. That message is so, so important. I will just say, from my story, your story and my story actually intersected a handful of times. So first of all, my dad growing up was my mentor. My dad was my hero. He was on the same court you were on in a slightly different capacity, and frankly, about a foot smaller, but still large and in charge. And I was always so proud to see my dad on a basketball court, but he was also my coach. He was my, emotional kind of go-to support guy. But the person who introduced you and I about 4 years ago, I think, when we first got to know each other, is a guy named George Tolles, who I know is actually watching the show today.
Yes.
And George was actually a mentor to my dad, who became a mentor to me. And then, of course, I kind of ended up getting mentored by George too. So there's an example of, we have these worlds that connect, but they're men in our lives. And by the way, if you're watching and you're a woman, you've experienced the same thing from men and women. This idea of somebody who's teaching, mentor, holding you accountable, but at the same time, coaching you a little bit, like pushing you, like, I believe in you, but let's go. Come on, let's get this on. I love that point that you made. I think it's just so important to talk about that. We can talk about policy. We're going to get there. We can talk about how to change cities, and we can get there. But person to person, face to face, man to man, woman to woman is really where it starts.
Exactly. Yeah, I really agree with that. Thank you.
Man, that is so good. All right, so now you're on your way to the NBA. So what was that like, that transition into the professional sports world?
Well, I felt I was well prepared for it. Growing up all through those years, I was always a pretty good student anyway. So academics was never really my problem or my issue. It was trying to balance out academics and athletics at the same time, being a student athlete. But that prepared me for life after Washington State University. I was drafted actually by the then world champion Seattle Supersonics back in 1979, the year I graduated from WSU. But they had just won the NBA championship, and as they say, there was no room at the end. So here I am, the 15th or 16th guy on a 12-person team. There's no room at the end. So my coaches, my agent, they all talked sense into me to say, hey, James, if you go try out for the Sonics, you're just going to get cut and flounder around forever because they're not going to make room for you. They're a world championship team. If you go overseas and play, season yourself for a year, learn the ropes of the game, put up big numbers and perform at a big level. That's going to go much, much further for your basketball career. It's a short detour, but you got to be willing to do it. And so I actually went over to Siena, Italy, and played my first professional season of basketball, along with 10 other Italian guys in the team and one American guy. The quota was two foreigners per team. They're usually Americans. And loved it. I mean, I just fell in love with Italy, fell in love with the culture, the food, the language. I learned Italian. It was the first step of my international development in a lot of different countries and a lot of different languages. And so, here I was kicking and screaming as a young person, not knowing any better. I wanted to go ahead in to try it out for the Sonics, going through training camp, fooling myself. I was probably better than I was, end up getting cut, and then I'm out.
Yeah.
That's the hard-headedness I had and I wanted and the pride I had. But it took, again, some sensible people around me to say, hey, you've got the talent, you got the potential, but the time may not be right. You may have to take a little detour to get to where you're going. And so I was willing to take that detour. And it really helped me to grow as a person, being in another country, being in another culture, being thousands of miles away from home. That really helped me to develop into the person I am today. So I think my advice to all of our young folks out there, be patient and be willing to take the step and sometimes the extra steps it takes to get where you're going.
Unbelievable. That part of the story. I mean, first of all, the team was great. That was a Jack Sikma, Dennis Johnson,
right.
Gus Williams, I think, right?
Yes,
they played in the Dome.
That's right.
Back in the day. So I was like 8 then, by the way. So my dad was refereeing those games, though. The thing that's interesting. So I think what you just said about young. I'll just say my feeling growing up was I'm gonna run out of time and I got to get it in. But the person that gave you that advice to get that seasoning, I mean, you're on that team the next year, by the way.
That's right.
If I've got the numbers right, you're on that team playing about at least a quarter of the game. So you're coming off the bench, but you're playing with a great team, having had a little seasoning, and you're better off on the court in Italy than sitting at 12th man or 10th man or whatever in Seattle. So I think that's interesting how that patience really ends up paying off, and you end up as an all-star, I think in 88, if I have the year right. Sure. And things are just kind of going from there. Just the point about that mentoring. And yeah, like you just said, if you're watching this, it's all training. Everything that happens in your life that feels like a setback, it's all training. If you take it like training, you're gonna be rocking and rolling from there.
Yeah.
So keep going, man. Tell us a bit more about the NBA.
Yeah.
Favorite referee. Sorry, I'm just kidding. Don't answer that.
So after really an enjoyable, successful, productive year in Italy, I came on back to the NBA. Now the Sonics had my draft rights. They didn't cut me or trade me away. They just held on to my rights. So coming back in those days, I had to try out for the Seattle Supersonics, and or get them to trade me beforehand so I can try out. So I came back. I tried out for the Sonics. I was a much, much better player when I came back from Siena, Italy, than I was when I went over there. Here over in Italy, I'm playing 40 minutes a game. I'm 20 points, 15 rebounds, go, playing the whole game. So that was good. I came back. I
just lost you, buddy. I think your audio. There you go. You're back. You just said you came back and good.
I came back and made the team, and they decided to keep three big centers at the time: myself, Dennis Autry, and Jack Sikma.
Yep.
That was a little, so we played a little bit with the injured reserve list. Dennis and I would go back and forth, but I finally won out and started playing just about every game starting my second year for sure.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So you're coming in for Sikma. That's legit.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And at one time, I think during my third year with Seattle, we put together the Winnebago Wall.
You guys are both on the court at the same time. I love it.
Along with Lonnie Shelton.
That's back, by the way, that's back when big men used to stand down at the block and bang into each other. Now they're at like shooting 3-pointers and driving and stuff. Back then, that's when men were men, and they, boxing out meant something, right?
That's exactly right. That's exactly. So, I don't know if people remember Lonnie Shelton. Lonnie was one of my favorite teammates. 6'8", about 260 pounds of chiseled muscle. This guy was a monster. So I was at center at 7'2". Jack Sikma was the power forward at 6'11". Lonnie Shelton, the small forward at 6'9", 6'8". And along with Gus Williams, downtown Freddie Brown, Wally Walker, we had a great team and a great bunch of guys. To this day, are still very good friends of mine.
That's a great team. Not only a great team, great city, great time to be in Seattle. I mean, there's a lot you have going for you right there. So any story come to mind from those years that just stands out that you like to tell from those kind of the heyday?
Well, back in those days, it was a lot easier to interact with the fans. We played in the Kingdom, as you mentioned, and it had an immense parking lot to go out there for 60 or 70,000 people who would go to a game. You had to have a big flat parking lot. I don't think they had multi-story parking lots back then. But before the game, us players, we would be kind of roped off in a smaller, closer area of the parking lot to the entrance of the Kingdom, rather than go under a tunnel or anything like that. So we made that walk 100 yards or so from our car to the entrance of the Kingdom, and fans would walk with us. They'd be waiting for us before the game. It might be 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. We're getting there early, getting ready to get ready. And then after the games, the fans would walk with you back to your cars again. You didn't have that fear of harassment or safety concerns or just rude, obnoxious behaviors. These were fans that just really, idolized you. You were one of their favorite players. They wanted to walk with you, talk with you, press your flesh. And I wish we had days like that. And I hope maybe one day we can get back to that as a society.
Yeah.
We've gone so far the other way. And now, everyone's got their posse and everyone's, carrying weapons or whatever they're doing. And you don't dare walk 100 feet to your car from a parking lot anymore. And so I hope we get back. I'm kind of nostalgic that way and really remember the interaction with the fans. And so many of them are still my friends to this day.
It's interesting you mentioned the fans. So by the way, for those of you just joined us, my name's Ed Rush. I'm here with my friend James Donaldson. We're talking about going big. We're right in the middle of a discussion about his NBA career. We're going to get into the business stuff here in just a second. But, it's interesting. My dad, so I used to go on the road with my dad. And for those of you maybe just joined us, my dad was an NBA basketball referee in the same league that James was a player in. And I remember going on a road trip with my dad. I lived in Philly at the time. We went to Chicago. And it was Michael Jordan's first year. And I remember my dad, we used to sit on the side of the court during the shoot around before the game. And I was sitting on the side of the court with my dad. And he said, you see that player right there? His name is Michael Jordan. He came from North Carolina. He said, this player is going to change this game. You watch. Because and he said, if they could ever get other players around him, he's going to change the game. But, several years later, he told me another way that Jordan had changed the game. And he said, it used to be that the players used to fly on commercial flights and the bus would stop in the parking lot. And I watched the Bulls bus drive into the tunnel because Jordan couldn't move.
That's right.
There were so many people that came into Chicago just to see him He couldn't move. And so you see how that one player actually changes the game just by the virtue of his own personality. Is just fascinating. But I agree with you that that connection to the fans now is a lot more distant. And frankly, it happens more on social media now than it does in person. So interesting.
Yeah, true. So true. Well, the ticket prices are getting outrageous anyway. So the average fan can't really afford to go to more than a handful of games a season. So, maybe the NBA can look at its model one day and see and realize they don't have to make all the money in the world.
You're gonna
And,
you're gonna convince Adam Silver of that. I'd be
and maybe leave 10,000 seats in every arena available to the average fan for, $20 or $30, whatever it is, instead of $230.
Yeah, I would be up for that too. Actually, I would be up for that. So, all right. So we've covered your awesome career. Now in 95, right around 95, you're transitioning, similar transition I did out of the military, similar transition your dad did out of the military. Now you're going to go into the real world. And it's like, what are you going to do? So how did that decision-making process? I mean, you've been so successful as a speaker and an author and a leader. Where did that come from?
Well, I've always had that perseverance, just the willingness to do the hard work, roll up my sleeves. I don't need all the accolades and all the spotlight and things. And even when I was an NBA player, I always played with guys who got a lot more attention. They were flashier, they were mouthier or whatever. And that's fine. I just said, hey, I'll put my hard hat on and roll up my sleeves and get to work. And I just kept on getting to work for 14 years in the NBA. So it worked for me that way. I still get a lot of acknowledgments when people go back and look at the teams we played on and the players we played with that, indeed, I played a significant role in a lot of the things that we were going through back then. So I think just being able to hang in there no matter what is really the key to my success. And when I retired in 1995 from the NBA, I did play another 5 years overseas in Europe. I went back to Greece for 2 years, to Italy for 1 more year, and to Spain for 2 years. So, and I learned Spanish and Greek and Italian and the Greek. Oh, I soak this stuff up. I mean, I'm just such a cultural person who wants to learn and wants to see, wants to experience, and to make friends as well. I think that's the best way for anybody to get along in this world. It's just to sit down and break bread together, and you have a friend for life. So that's how I've always been. Now, the way I transitioned, though, into real everyday life after basketball was that back in 1989, I had a very, very serious knee injury, a ruptured patella tendon, which is usually career ending and definitely career threatening. Mine was very career threatening. That just knocked me out of the season. And I spent the next year recovering, rehabbing, putting myself back together again. Fell in love with the world of physical therapy and physical therapists and all that they can do to put the human body back together again. Worked with a lot of exercise phys people, nutritionists, strength conditioning coaches. And I realized I had a light bulb moment at that time that just said, hey, if my NBA career is over, and I hope it's not. I was only 31 years old at the time. If my career is over, this is what I want to do. Get into the world of physical therapy, set up multiple clinics here and there, and really have a service that gives back to the community and helps out folks who are going through a very similar traumatic thing like I'm going through with my knee right now. So we started the Donaldson Clinic way back in 1989, a year after my accident injury. And I started it with a physical therapist friend of mine. So the idea was the two of us would run this and keep it going. It was matured a good 8 or 9 years by the time I retired from European basketball too. I retired officially in 2000 to finally roll back into the business, which I had started back in '89. But I was a part of every offseason. I'd be there, and I'd be going to school at the University of Washington, picking up all my prerequisites for physical therapy. So I was really, really engaged with this for quite a while. So my transition was a little bit easier than most of the players' transitions because a lot of the guys don't plan. They have no idea what they're going to do, and they think they're going to play forever. But sports is one of those things that very, very, very few of us ever get a chance to walk away from voluntarily. It's over. You get the call one day, you're cut. Or you just don't have any more opportunities. That's how sports is at a relatively young age for 30-year-olds, 32-year-olds. They're done, and that's just the nature of sports. So most guys don't get the chance to plan for their future, what they want to do, to develop other interests outside of sports. I was always having other interests. Like I said, I was a good student all through my growing up years. And then once I went internationally and culturally internationally, I just really developed into all different areas of life and had so many interests that my transition was a lot easier than most of the guys.
It's interesting. So I didn't realize your business and your professional career overlapped by at least 8 years.
Yes.
That's fascinating. I don't know many I know a lot of players that got out and, like you said, have had transitional issues. You know, I think I know more players who had issues than did it successfully. I mean, the first thing is a guy's getting $10 million, he doesn't get $10 million.
That's right.
People don't understand, like, the government's going to take about half of that, by the way.
That's
Then
right.
and there's agents and all different kinds of expenses and stuff like that. So yeah, they're making money, but they're not making, like, sometimes like you think they are. And then the second thing is you have somebody who spent their whole life thinking about basketball, and then now all of a sudden you're transitioning, but if you don't have the name to use, sometimes there's a challenge. And I know a lot of former professional athletes that had major financial issues. I think the leagues are doing a better job with their players coming in now. But anyway, it's interesting that you had that foundation. So you're at, like, 1 foot in business, 1 foot in professional sports. So you knew what it meant to get new customers and how to take care of people. It was a topic that was passionate for you, and you were learning it at the same time. I just think that's really, really commendable. So you're in business now.
Yes, I became a businessman for 20 years with the Donaldson Clinic was the name of the business, the Donaldson Clinic. And for 28 years, we ran very successfully out of Mill Creek, Washington, which is about 20, 30 miles north of Seattle, but also locations in Seattle, in Tacoma, about 30 miles south, in Kirkland, right on the other side of the lake, and Mukilteo, up by Mill Creek, in Cashmere, Washington. So we had all these locations pop up and become part of those communities over the years. And that was my greatest joy, is really working with the communities and working with our senior citizens. So a lot of seniors would come in, or we'd go pick them up, actually. We had a courtesy shuttle van that would go pick them up and bring them physical therapy, bring them to exercise. We would provide physical therapy services at the assisted living home. So all this was really engaged in the community, and I just really loved it, became a big part of it. Worked with the chambers of commerce, the business association groups. I was a member to just about everything in town with like 5 or 6 different locations. So it was really, really good for me. I want to mention, Ed, that working with retired players, I was a board of director for 8 years with the NBA Retired Players Association, and we see the same thing. We have about 800 members in the association, but statistics show, and they have all the charts and graphs. 5 years after retirement, about 70% of the guys will go through a divorce.
Wow.
5 years after, and you could retire at 23.
Yep.
Or at 33. But 5 years later, 70% of the guys will go through a divorce. And a lot of it is because the lifestyle sudden change of, you can afford hundreds of thousands of dollars in expenses and things, to boom, your contract's over, your income's over. Hopefully you have savings you can keep on living off of. So that's a big adjustment for a lot of them.
Yeah.
Less than about 20% of the guys have a college degree, which really hampers them, especially if they're just a marginal player in the professional ranks. Now you got to get out in the real job world and get a job, competing against college graduates with a high school diploma. And many of the guys are having difficulty reading at grade level. So you might graduate from high school, but you're reading at ninth grade level. Then you go to college and you try to keep on this facade, keep pushing through, keep trying to do what you can do, but you're not getting educated, you're not learning. And so this is something we're working with constantly with the retired players to get them, to take advantage of this. I think it's a golden opportunity to be a student athlete.
Yeah.
Free room and board, tuition, books, training table, study table, all kind of things, tutors. You've got to take advantage of this. And if you don't, it's shame on you, because they are definitely taking advantage of you, the high schools and universities. So take advantage of your opportunity.
What do you think? This is just a parenthetical question, and no opinion's fine on this. California just passed this new regulation for the NCAA, which I have no idea how they can enforce, that basically says they need to pay their players a share of the profit that comes in. What do you think about that at the college level? I've heard arguments on both sides of that discussion.
Yeah. I've never been in favor of paying the college athletes. I was a student athlete. I was a college athlete. I was on scholarship, full ride. It paid for everything. I didn't leave college with a single dime in debt of college tuition. Most average students leave with $100,000 or so in student debt that they're paying off for the rest of their life. So already, that's a huge advantage for the scholarship college athlete. You're getting your room and board, you're getting your food, you're getting your training table, your tutoring sessions, your tuition is paid. Now, I wish the colleges would step up and continue to provide this full ride scholarship until graduates.
Yeah.
Because we put so much time into sports, most of us, even after 5 years, are still quite a few credits short of graduating.
Yep.
The colleges should step up and say, okay, come back for your 6th year, your 7th year, whatever it takes. You're not going to pay for it. You're going to get your degree. And that way, that college athlete will be much better prepared to go off into the real world.
It's an interesting point, right? Because a lot of players nowadays are one and done. They go to school for a year, they go into the NBA, but the school had offered them a full ride throughout their course. So maybe there should be something that just covers the kid coming back to look. You want to go to the NBA? Great.
Yes.
Go for it. But like that way they can go back and finish their last 3 years in school and get the benefit of that schooling as well. I will say what you just said. I think I love watching the NBA. Don't get me wrong. I like professional sports. I think the game is very, very pure at the professional level, but there is nothing like watching college basketball. Just the purity of the amateur sport is something else. And I agree with you. I'd hate to see that get tarnished by some sort of funding structure or whatever. So,
right. Now, and even if your star athlete is able to sell T-shirts and likenesses of himself or herself, I guess that's okay. I mean, you're going to create a little resentment with your teammates, so you should take care of that. Your success. So, maybe the kids can figure that out amongst themselves, how to divvy that up. But colleges should let the kids go ahead and reap some kind of benefit from the images that they have that the college are using, and the kids aren't getting an opportunity. Yeah, when I was a college student athlete, I might get $150 a month for spending money, meals, laundry, those kind of basic things. Maybe you should up it to $1,000 a month, but you shouldn't pay the kids $20,000, $40,000, $50,000. No, don't do that. Don't do that.
I'm with you. So let's transition. I want to talk about your city. I want to talk about the country, actually. I know you're passionate about leadership at all levels. But before I do, let me just say, welcome to everybody who just joined us. My name is Ed Rush. I'm here with my friend James Donaldson. We're talking about going big. James and I have known each other for years. We're just talking about his career and the transition he took into business. And as you're joining us, please do jump in on chat. It's on the right-hand side on YouTube. Facebook, it's just right below. Say hello. My team's highlighting the chat comments as we go so that we can have this great conversation. When you started Donaldson Clinic, you were active in the Chamber of Commerce. So you were not only in basketball, you were in business, but you were also active in community. And that wasn't the only thing you were doing, but it was certainly a community-facing operation that you did. And over the years, since the 90s when you started in business, Seattle's changed a lot. And this year in particular, it's been on the news a lot. In fact, just this morning, I saw another news article about some unrest in the city, and a lot of finger pointing, frankly. I'm not sure where the fingers ought to be pointing, but I know that you've been engaged in your city, dude, for a long time. What what are your thoughts about what's happening? But more importantly, what can we do as caring, concerned citizens, not only about the city of Seattle, but the cities of the United States and the whole country of the United States to really turn around this violence and unrest that we're seeing right now?
Well, caring, concerned citizens, this is the first and probably the most important thing you can do is to get out and vote. You have to. I mean, a city like Seattle, typically we have 35% of the electorate that turns out to vote. 35%. That's terrible.
Amazing.
And maybe 20% during the summertime primaries. That's terrible. What you're doing is letting the extremes, the fringes on both ends of the spectrum, gobble up their share and possibly put somebody that they want into office, which is not going to represent you. And so you have to. And so I would love to see us get a voting drive going in Seattle that gets our voting turnout to the 50 percentile, 60 percentile. Now you're speaking much more for the average Seattleite, the person who's been here for 20 or 30 years, who's raised a family, who owns a home, pays taxes, and does all the responsible, reasonable things. Now those are the folks that need to be represented. And they weren't represented this last year here in Seattle in 2020 in the summer of love, we called it, or at least our mayor called it.
I know.
And
I saw that.
it was horrendous.
So it wasn't love.
No, not at all. I don't know what kind of social experiment this was supposed to be. I did not partake in this thing. I was up there at Chap and Chaz 3 or 4 days a week, also doing short little video snippets, calling for our elected officials to step up and lead. This is what we elect you for. But instead, they all buried their hands in the sand and let the cities burn, let the businesses be broken and vandalized, let the looting happen, let the terrible eyesore that Chap and Chaz became, let it continue to grow and mushroom, and finally culminating in the death of 2 young Black men, Black teens. And it was just horrific. I mean, this is what that summer of love produced. And it's not, I know that's not the intent. That wasn't the intent. But when you don't have people who are there to oversee and to supervise and to ensure and enforce, things go awry very, very quickly. We found that out. And it was a disgusting scene. And I called for all the elected officials to resign. If you're not going to get out of here, let's put some people in here who will.
Yeah, I mean, that was so first of all, I watched that whole situation develop, and it seemed to me one of those things where you can go about the right reason the wrong way. I think people justfully were upset at what they viewed as an unjust system. And one of the biggest things that concerns me about our nation, not just the cities, the nation, is the injustice. There are rules for certain people that don't exist for other people. And by the way, I'm not just talking about race. I'm talking about there are people who are in Washington who live by a completely different set of rules than we do as normal people. So I understand how people can react against injustice. It just seemed like in their reaction, they were using the same, they were creating injustice with their reaction against injustice. That's the way it felt to me with what was happening.
Yeah, I agree so much with that. I mean, and I think when you look at the big picture, we're all first of all, we're all God's children, but we're actually all children still too. So when you favor,
I love that.
You favor one person over another, there's going to be some envy and jealousy and resentment. You favor one group over another, there's going to be envy, jealousy, and resentment. You can't sort things out and say, I'm going to treat this segment of our population one way when we're all together, we're all in this together. And so, we have to kind of be, using our wisdom a lot better for making decisions and seeing the effect it has on other groups. I am totally against, taking robbing from Peter to give to Paul or
Yeah.
whatever. I'm totally against that. Give opportunities to everyone equally, and then everybody rises up. And if you got to do that over and over and over, keep making those opportunities available, make them as simple as possible, a very low bar, and they can get into the workforce, the education force, whatever area of life they want to get into. And I think that's the frustration that's starting to build up and to foment over. And our elected officials just don't address it.
What do you think? You said the first one was to vote. What do you think? What other solutions do you have in mind for this problem, either in the city or nationally?
Well, I think we got to demand and accountability from our elected officials. There should be no reason why an elected official, elected by the people, won't answer a simple, basic question.
So, James, I have your audio, but your video just kind of kicked on me, which is the audio is great. So I can still hear you, but I think maybe your camera just kind of kicked off. I don't know if there's a way to.
No, it was muted. Now it's back on. Yeah, I don't know what happened to our video.
No problem. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to keep it cranking. And let me just see what I can do here real quick. Here, I'll tell you what. I'll give you 20 seconds. Just see if you can turn your camera, unplug it, and plug it back in again. I'm going to do a quick station identification. I'm going to come back. This topic we're talking about is so important. I don't want you to miss this. James has been involved in the city of Seattle for so long. I just want to make sure you hear his wisdom on this. By the way, those of you just joined us, we're talking to my friend James Donaldson. We're talking about going big. Right now, we're talking about politics. And when we talk about politics, by the way, you should have a smile on your face, okay? Because we don't do it. We don't talk about it in a way that is angry, like you see a lot of times. By the way, I got my mug today. Government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. That's Abraham Lincoln. Don't forget about that. And James, when I show this mug, I always remind. I bought this mug at Independence Hall in Philadelphia, and then I dropped it on the way home. So it's all cracked, like the Liberty Bell. But I always tell people this is representative of our country. We might be beat up a little bit. We may have made some mistakes, but we're still a good country. So let's support each other. All right. So you were about to talk about the most important thing, which was how do we solve the problem? So I'm going to go back to you.
Yeah, as I was mentioning, we're all children in a way, and we have to find ways, especially from our leadership on down, to treat everybody as fairly and as equitably as possible, and stop segregating out certain groups or certain demographics and pitting them against others, because I think one of the surefire ways to get people upset is to feel like something's being taken from them and giving to others. Without a justification for that. I think most people are reasonable and can understand helping out others. That's fine. But at least let them have some say in the matter, or some understanding, some transparency of what's exactly going on and what the process is at place. Our elected officials have a lot of work to do. We need to hold them accountable. And if they start slip sliding away, changing their tune from what they said on the campaign trail to what they say in office, you got to send a strong message the next voting cycle and vote them out of there and get some new people in. That's the only thing our elected officials understand.
It's so true. And yet it's so strange what you said. It is the most important elections oftentimes are the primary elections in an off-year election. So, for example, an off year would be coming up in 2022 when there's not a presidential election on the horizon, and it's a primary, which is going to happen in March to June, depending on your city or state. Those elections oftentimes are the ones that send a signal to Washington. So, for example, here in California, I'm in a very Democratic district here in District in 53. Over in 50 is Alpine, which is very Republican. Each of those places, they're going to win no matter what. But if they have an opponent that comes out of their party that's ready to move them out and they're going to get primaried, as it were, it sends a message to them that their conduct or their voting is not exactly what we want. So I love what you said. Number one is to vote. Number two, good people. We need good people that are willing to listen, that have a solution, but aren't going to be bought into big pharma or big tech or whatever the big money donors are, but are going to make decisions based on what's right and not based on who's paying the money or their party for that matter. James, you ran for mayor of Seattle. You also ran for, I believe it was District 7 City Council.
Yes.
And I was told, I don't know if this is like, I was told you may even think about doing it. I would just love to encourage you and just say, if you do, you got me behind you, dude. You also have the EdTalks Live family, okay? I would love to see a good man like you leading a great city like Seattle. It's going to be hard work, but I know that you can turn it around with the good help of the good people of Seattle and the God that you serve. So let me just encourage you with that, buddy. I will be behind you. I'll even come up and do what I can and in Seattle if I can with you. So it would be awesome.
Thank you. Thank you. I've got a tremendous heart for our communities and for the people in general, not just here in Seattle, all around the world. I mean, I feel for folks, and I feel like politics is really the best way to really get inside around the decision-making table, around the policy-making table, and actually make some changes for the good. Good people are hard to find, though. Good people who don't have these other crazy agendas and want to get in there and be disruptors. I mean, I feel like I've always been the kind of person, I think a lot of it has to do with my international life experience of being able to talk with everyone and anyone and being able to listen to them as well. Learning their language, no matter what language they're trying to talk in or how they speak, learning what they're saying. There's the old Stephen Covey saying, seek first to understand and then be understood. And that goes a long, long way toward building relationships with people from every stripe and every background of life. So I still have it in me. I'm interested in taking a look again. It's going to be a tough job. The city's very divided. The nation's very divided, which is why we need people who can unify people together, bring them together, treat them all equally and specially, and make sure they all feel welcomed underneath the big tent that you're creating.
I love it, man. I love it. I'll tell you what, here's what we're going to do. If you decide to run for mayor of Seattle, I'm going to have you back on the show. Okay. We're going to talk the whole show about how to change the city. And then we're going to get behind you. All right. And the chat's already on board with that. So here's what I'm going to do. James, I'm going to give you a parting shot here in about 30 seconds. For those of you just joined us, we're just about to wrap up the show. My name is Ed Rush. I'm here with my friend James Donaldson. We're talking about how to change your world, how to change your life. We went through his career into business, out of the NBA into business, and also into world changing. I just have to tell you, there's something you said that I think is very meaningful, and it's something you've been doing your whole life. You said, when you were growing up, it was your dad, then it was a coach, that Marine coach in high school. Then it was George Raveling and then Lenny Wilkins, who were mentors for you. And then, you turned into a mentor, helping young men and women to grow into business or into sports or become great citizens. And now, hopefully, you're on your way to truly mentoring a city. It's really those people that have helped you, that you've passed it on to people, and now hopefully onto an even bigger entity like an entire city. But I think that point is just so powerful, what you can do one-on-one, man-to-man, woman-to-woman. So I'm going to let you close us up today with your parting shot. And as we're closing up in chat, please throw your comments in for today's show too, which has just been so great. Go ahead, man.
Yeah, I think as is part of human nature, I think after people have gone through situations long enough, they realize that there's got to be something better. There's got to be a better option, a better alternative. I think that's what people are seeing with our politics around the country and also locally here in Seattle. I think we'll see more and more voter participation, hopefully, and that's going to be a good thing because then more and more voters have their say in the matter. Ed mentioned earlier on in the program that I just authored a new book called Celebrating Your Gift of Life. And this is all about a slight downturn in my life back in 2018 that I went through serious depression, anxiety, suicidal ideations. It was just a series of life events, one after another, that I was not able to outrun or out jump or anything else. I turned it over to God. I turned it over to my medical professionals. After 12 long, dark, desperate months, I finally worked my way through that with their help. And now I'm back on my feet again, and I'm good to go. I'm solid as ever. And this is my new chapter of life, is really being a voice and an advocate for mental health awareness and suicide prevention. I was there. I know. You don't have to take this wonderful gift of life that God has given us and throw it away. That's the last thing he would want you to do. He wants you to cherish it and to live this life and live it abundantly. And we can do that. We need each other. We got to reach out for each other, continue to love and support each other. And we'll enjoy this journey on earth much, much better than before. So those are my parting shots. I just really want to say I really welcome the opportunity to talk to you today and share a little bit about my life that I've been blessed to have. Thank you.
You're the man. Thank you, James. By the way, I pulled the book up on Amazon. The book is called Celebrating Your Gift of Life.
Yes.
It's a steal at $19.95. So jump on the Amazon and grab the book. Learn a little bit more about James. And I always do this, James, when I have a guest that I love the interview, I always ask you when we're live if you'll come back. That way you have to say yes. So, so like I said, when you get ready to go, I can't speak for James, and he hasn't filed anything. I'm just encouraging him. But I think your leadership would be not only needed but desperately needed for a great city like Seattle, and you certainly have the background and the leadership chops to do it. So thanks, buddy. I appreciate your time today.
Thanks so much, Ed. Have a great day.
Awesome. All right. So we're here at 10 o'clock Tuesdays and 1 o'clock, 10 o'clock Pacific on Tuesdays and Thursdays, 1 o'clock Eastern for EdTalks Live. More great interviews just like this. Make sure you take action on what you learned today. And EdTalks Live is out.